Hey guys, what's going on? Andrew coming at you, and I'm about to go there. I'm going to talk about how I see Trump after living in Sweden for 7 years.
Sweden.
I'm going to try to keep this civil. I'm not going to necessarily like just jump to one side of the fence or the other. I'm going to try to look at this very objectively because I feel like I gave Trump a fair shot in the beginning. I try to look at it, as just like I'm open-minded. Let's see what happens. Although maybe I wasn't thrilled about it. But I'm also going to talk about how living in Sweden has kind of changed my perspective. I've written down 5 points that I want to talk about here, but I just feel like there's enough hate and like angry people on the internet, and I kind of want to get away from that. I know I can't change how people are going to write in the comments, but with all that said, let's get into it. Now, the first thing I want to say is you have to understand why Trump was elected. One thing I often hear is that 50% of Americans are racist, and everybody that voted for Trump is a racist. And I just believe that that is not a correct argument. And it's interesting because the first 3 weeks Trump was a president, I was eating dinner in Sweden and sitting at a table, and a guy said that everybody that voted for Trump was racist, and I just played devil's advocate and said I didn't believe that that was true. And he stood up from the table and he was like, I'm not going to sit here and eat with this racist, and left. And the funny thing is, I didn't even vote for Trump. I was just playing devil's advocate because I don't think that you can alienate half of the country. And that's kind of where we are now sometimes. It feels like 50% of people are angry on one side or the other. I think that part of the reason Trump was elected is because people were really upset with the political system, upset at the two-party system. You had a lot of people in the United States that were losing their jobs, and Trump went to a lot of those small areas. For example, I'm from Pennsylvania, you got Pittsburgh, you got Philadelphia, and then we like to joke, we call it Pennsyltucky in the middle because you have a lot of small communities that used to be maybe coal mining towns or industry, and they've lost a lot of jobs. And Trump would go to those areas and talk to those people, and he spoke to them, and for the first time they felt like they had a voice and it really mattered. So I think people like that voted for Trump. I think people that just was unhappy, wanted to throw a wrench into the system. I think that Hillary getting the nomination didn't work out for people overall because I think you had Democrats that were also upset that Bernie Sanders didn't get his true shot. I'm not sure if Bernie Sanders would have been able to beat Trump at the time, but it would have been very awesome to see those two go at it because you had Trump, someone that was completely different, not a politician, and you had Hillary, who was a career politician. And information came out that they kind of suppressed Bernie and didn't let Bernie go any further. When I was in the States in the summer, what's really cool is I was able to talk to people that, of all different races, all different sexual orientations, and I kept hearing a very common theme, and I thought this was cool. They said that they thought that Trump was great for business, but he was hurting us socially to a point where it's almost not worth it. And that's something you can really see, as an outsider, and I go back to the States, I think that most people in the United States are really friendly to each other. It doesn't matter what race or where you come from, but there's an underlying tension there that used to not to exist. People don't want to talk about politics so much, and I think it's a little bit dangerous because I think in the United States, okay, look, we have all different races, all different groups of people, but we're 300 million people, or over 300 million people. We got to find a way to work together. We cannot look at each other as the enemy. I mean, we're all in this together, and unfortunately, it just feels like when Trump got elected, he doesn't back down from things. He doubles down from things. And I'll give an example. He'll say, I'm against white supremacy and all other forms of supremacy. And if you were someone that's racist or part of the KKK, there's a strong possibility that you could look at that and say, oh, he has to denounce us, but he's not really denouncing us. That's great. I mean, he did the same thing with Charlottesville. And there's no doubt that, okay, there was a group called Antifa there, but there were also Nazis there on the University of Virginia campus. And when I was in Charlottesville, it was just crazy to think that such a beautiful university had to deal with this issue. And, he felt the need to do that. And again, you can make the argument, does he not want to lose that type of support? I'm not 100% sure, but I do think it's a bit crazy. And it makes me suspect Trump a little bit because he's not backing down from that. And I think that's interesting as well. Now, another interesting thing I want to say about Trump is this. Okay, so he's been great for business, but I just really think that Trump's putting a Band-Aid on a gaping, bleeding wound.
I'd be willing to bet every single one of these companies that are building these factories, those factories, and they still should do them, right? And I think indirectly he's benefiting those companies on a macro basis, but from the macro basis for the whole country, benefiting those companies, but right, on the macro basis for the whole country. every one of those companies that are going to be building new factories, their net employment is going to be lower.
Sure.
Once those factories are built than he even anticipates.
The new factories will have robots where they had humans in the past.
And they're just pushing them towards further automation, right? And further use of deep learning, machine learning, et cetera.
Car companies are going to have computers. If you're someone that's driving a truck or has a job where you drive a car or a taxi, when self-driving vehicles can drive, which we're probably only 5 to 10 years away, those people are going to lose their job or their value is going to drop by a lot. There's just no way around that. Even if you're a doctor, there might be an artificial intelligence system that can do what you do more efficiently, even if you're an engineer. So some of the jobs where the highest paying jobs are just going to suffer. Probably the biggest in the next 2 or 3 years is going to be like malls, anything where you work in retail. Those people are going to lose their job because you have companies like Amazon just taking over and people prefer to shop online. So Trump might be good temporarily, but I do believe whether Trump's in office for 4 years or 8 years, you're going to have you're going to have fewer jobs and fewer people working than when he started if we don't really start to address those issues. On top of that, I'm not like maybe the biggest fan that we make an argument that global warming isn't real, because let's say this. Let's say for whatever reason you don't believe that global warming is real. Doesn't it make sense to not have so much plastic and terrible stuff in the environment, even if we're not making the planet warmer? Even if you go that route, don't we have a responsibility to leave the planet better than when we left it? And that's another major point. Like, Trump has taken over, but I feel like we still have a lot of major issues. We still have healthcare that, okay, maybe Obamacare wasn't perfect, but healthcare system could be a lot better. It's a bit ridiculous, I think, that we have prescription drug commercials on television.
Some people have had changes in behavior, hostility, agitation, depressed mood, and suicidal thoughts or actions while taking or after stopping Chantix. If you notice agitation, hostility, depression, or changes in behavior, thinking, or mood that are not typical for you, or if you develop suicidal thoughts or actions, stop taking Chantix and call your doctor right away. Talk to your doctor about any history of depression or other mental health problems, which can get worse while taking Chantix. Some people can have allergic or serious skin reactions to Chantix, some of which can be life-threatening.
Trying to advertise to people, and that in the United States we have companies that can really spike the price of drugs. We have people going to Canada to buy insulin, for example. And when you come from a country, or you live in a country like Sweden, okay, it's not perfect, we definitely have a higher tax rate, but at the same time, we have, in my opinion, I think the United States might have a faster healthcare system. Like, maybe you could see your doctor quicker, but we have a healthcare system that makes a lot more sense. Like, you're not going to break the bank if you get cancer. You're not going to have to go bankrupt if you get cancer. If you buy or you need a lot of medications, once you pay over like $100, you don't have to pay anything more. The same with seeing a doctor. You pay like a $10 fee to go see a doctor. It's a very reasonable thing. And just the U.S. healthcare system is just so messed up right now. It's the same with college. Like, okay, maybe in the United States you have to pay for college, but the amount that you have to pay for college is just skyrocketed, and it's not going down in any sense of the form. And if you were someone that went to college like 30 years ago, you're not paying the same amount as people today. And then on top of that, there are fewer jobs than there were before. So you go and you study for school, and then suddenly technology takes over that job. Well, you're out of luck, and you owe Uncle Sam a bunch of money. So there's issues there that really need to be addressed. And on top of that, we still have the mass shooting problems in the United States. We still have people shooting each other. I always see the United States like a giant ox. It's just going to take us a long time to move in one direction or the other direction because we have so many different groups of people. But it's an issue sometimes. I think it's kind of a benefit sometimes when you have Sweden being a little bit of a smaller country that can have some common sense gun laws, a little bit better education, and you can make an argument because we don't have a big military in Sweden and the United States has a bigger military, that's one of the reasons. But I just think it's important to talk about on here that I feel like my taxes in Sweden actually go to something positive, where in the United States, I'm not always sure where it really goes. Being home for me, the one that really, the straw that broke the camel's back, the one that made me feel like I have to do a video about this, I have to talk about this, has to be the Send Her Back chant. Now, I feel like no matter if you're Republican or Democrat, to have a majority of people in the crowd chanting "Send her back" in the South, an area of the South having a lot of racial history to it, it's just not To me, there's no going back from that. I can't forgive that. When we look at someone like John McCain, who was in maybe a similar situation, he spoke up.
We're scared. We're scared of an Obama presidency, and I'll tell you why. I'm concerned about someone that cohorts with domestic terrorists such as Ayers.
I have to tell you, he is a decent person and a person that you do not have to be scared as President of the United States. Now, look, I
got to ask you a question. I do not I can't trust Obama. I have read about him, and he's an Arab. He is not. No?
No, ma'am. He's a decent family man, citizen that I just happen to have disagreements with on fundamental issues, and that's what this campaign is all about. He's not. Thank you. Thank you.
He was a good leader. Trump didn't say anything for 15 seconds and then lied about not liking it when he didn't do anything at the time. Okay, whether you agree with the politician or not, and if they've said things that have been controversial, you can vote them out of office if you don't like them. But for someone that comes from an immigrant background, that comes to the United States, that makes it all the way to Congress, that's like the highest level you can go. Whether you agree with them or not, what a success story for someone that immigrated to the United States. But no, we want to send her back. We want to say all this stuff, and it's a lot of anger, and I think it's very, very dangerous. I saw that in the summer, and I really felt uneasy in my stomach. I was like, there's no way. If you were a Republican right now, how can you support this guy? How can you let that go? Because that was a moment where you could really show your leadership and say, guys, you know what? We're not going to do that. That's not okay. But he seemed to let it happen. And there's a responsibility with that, and this is something that I can't support. Now, there is one positive I want to say with Trump being the president that I think we can look at, is he has shaken up politics. He has changed politics. I think 10, 20 years from now, it's going to be very interesting because maybe more politicians, more presidents are going to communicate with people through Twitter. He is a social media president, and he has shaken the system up. And there are a lot of new, exciting politicians coming out. For one, I think Andrew Yang is a very interesting person because he's got a little bit of a grassroots movement now. You saw Bernie Sanders. I mean, Bernie Sanders might be a little bit too old, but I think someone like Andrew Yang could be very interesting going up against Trump, because I think people that voted for Trump might consider voting for Andrew Yang as well, because he's still addressing the same issues. He just has a different take on it when he talks about universal basic income and treating technology like oil. Like, you have rich oil countries in the Middle East that give money to their population from the oil that they have. And, you can make an argument in the United States that technology is our petroleum. In a video like this, I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of comments about negative things and Sweden's falling apart and this, immigration has ruined everything. Now, that's just simply not true. I spend a majority of my day living here in Sweden. It's a very peaceful place to live. We have issues, we have problems. It was difficult to deal with the refugee crisis if you worked in certain social services, but it was something that we got through, and it was a humanitarian thing. And again, I always believed that every person should be judged based on something they did. If someone commits a crime, fine. If someone does the right thing, cool, but treat it that way. But the moment we start looking at each other as different and saying, oh, you look this way, you're different. You look that way, you're different. We're just not moving together as a society, For hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years really, we've been doing that, and it's not healthy. Why? We have to work together. We have to stop seeing each other as the enemy. And Sweden has showed me that I will make an argument right now. I lived in the United States for 25 years. I've lived in Sweden for 7 now, and my quality of life is better in Sweden. It just is. I live a much more stress-free life, and the United States deserves that. We work a ton. We pay a lot in taxes, and we just don't see the same benefits. And it's when you're in the United States, you're in this giant bubble, and you can just be like, yes, we're great. Well, the United States is great, and there's a lot of great things in the United States. There's a lot of things to be proud of, but we could be better. We could try new things. We could approach things from a more intellectual level and take our feelings away from things more. We could look at each other with more love and compassion. So that's how I see things. That's my opinion. I hope you guys like this video. I hope I don't get a lot of hate for this, but what can you do? If you guys like this kind of content, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Hello.